Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Empty Cans Podcast. My name is Mark.
And I'm Mike.
We have the all-day drinker here with us, joining us for this very special podcast. Today is all about Alliteration Ales. We are joined today by Adam. Welcome, Adam.
Oh, thanks so much. Thanks for coming out here.
You bet. Thanks for having us.
What's up, Mark?
So, okay, the very first question, before we get into anything, is probably the biggest question. Alliteration.
I'm glad you spelled it right.
Right. Where did that come from and why? I mean, what?
So, an alliteration is the occurrence of the same letter at the first, the same letter that starts a word, multiple words in a row. So, Alliteration Ales is one version of alliteration, and or other things like Brown Beard, like Boise Beer Buddies,
right,
like Boise Brewing, and so when my other half, Shelly, and I were kind of trying to come up with a name for this endeavor, we always liked how those alliterative names really how they sounded, how they can kind of roll off your tongue. They're easy to remember, so we thought. And then we were kind of kicking around like ideas, and she's like, well, alliteration brewing doesn't really make sense because then it's not an alliteration. And I just said, well, what about alliteration ales? And it was like, that stuck.
There you
and
go.
So that's exactly what we went with, and allows us to have some fun with it and have some fun with the beer names. You know, I mean, there are some really obnoxious beer names out there. Some really beer names that doesn't, like, that's a great beer, but that beer name, I wouldn't ever use that word in a sentence or those few words together. But if it's a good beer, cool. We're going to name a beer that. So it's kind of like Led Zeppelin. You know, it's the name itself doesn't matter. It's the stuff behind it matters.
Absolutely.
Sure.
And, I think that my wife could probably use the word alliteration to test my sobriety level.
Yeah. Oh, we get all sorts of mispronunciations.
Oh, I bet.
We've even joked about doing a whole illiteracy IPA with it. Just because it's like, wait, you're from Altercation Ales, like, Alienation Ales, like, are we Immigration Ale? No, we're not. Like, there's just people. It's like, no, it starts with an A. Like, why
right.
are you putting it? It's like, I don't know.
Hey, just so everybody knows, the sounds that you're hearing in
right.
the background, we're actually in the brewery today, and this is really cool. And so
You can hear my glycol kicking on and like all the bubbling fermenters. And
got fermenting happening right before our very eyes.
It's not just breakfast not sitting right.
Right. Everything's set up on these two fine barrels that will have.
So from
something in
Payette
it.
Brewing, by the way.
From Payette, that will have something delicious in it soon. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking.
Yeah. So if want to talk about it, because I want to shout out to Mike from Payette. That again, some of these big breweries that are in the area, the whole brewing community in Boise is really excellent because it's very collaborative, very much like, hey, we're done using these whiskey barrels for 12 gauge. Do you want them? And it's like, all right, I'd love to throw something in a barrel because they do their Black Friday event every
right.
Black Friday. And since obviously, we're sitting here, I don't have much room. It's like, I can't have a barrel room. I can't have like a whole
right.
stack of them, but it's like, I just need like one or two. And he's like, yeah, do you want a couple of them? And it's like, all right, so we're going to actually in this tank to my right that's bubbling at us is our Borealis Baltic Porter. It's one of our best-selling beers, big flagship beers, and that's going to go directly in these barrels. So by Black Friday, we'll have a barrel-aged Borealis for barrel-aged Borealis Baltic Porter for Black Friday.
So like 9 months,
Yep.
you'll be sitting in these barrels.
Yep.
That'd be cool.
That will be exciting.
Yeah.
Very good. Will this coming year, will that be your first year as part of the Black Friday event?
As part of it, yes. We've attended a couple times because that's a lot of fun. But we haven't, because we don't have anything barrel aged. Like, we have the Baltic Porter, but it'd be the lightest beer there at 8%.
Right. Yeah, they got some pretty big ones.
Yeah.
So right now, you poured us a beer. Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
What are we drinking today?
So we're drinking, and the appearance is great on. It looks really great on the radio. So this
It looks really great in person too.
it's the Arrow Rock American Kolsch. It's our American Kolsch. It's Kolsch it's an ale yeast fermented at lager temperatures, and I use all Idaho hops, Idaho malt, and obviously Idaho water. But so I didn't really feel right calling it an American or like a real Kolsch, like a true Kolsch.
Sure.
But because it's ale yeast, it's not a lager. It does ferment faster. That's actually what's in the big 7-barrel tank right here, bubbling at us more steadily. But that is, I can brew it faster. It's still light, crisp, refreshing. It's using again more American style hops. It's a little bit fruitier than a true Kolsch, true German Kolsch. But it's going to be really great for spring and summer.
It is a really nice beer, and I'm enjoying it. How about you?
Right. So Mike is our other beer guy. His palate's kind of refined to a lot of the Raniers. Is that what you call it?
Sure.
He has a wider spectrum for his palate. Me, it used to be wide, and then one crazy night. You know how that goes. Mm-hmm. And then pretty soon I find myself only drinking IPAs. So
normally it's the opposite.
This year, actually started last year, I've started broadening my horizons. My brother, he is a true stout guy. He loves his stouts. And I tell you what, I have had some phenomenal stouts that, no matter what my palate is, those stouts are really fucking good.
Yeah.
This here, the Kolsch, I haven't had too many Kolsches, but this one, it's full of flavor. And that's kind of what I like is full flavor.
Yeah.
Sometimes you have a beer that is kind of lacking in the flavor department, but this one does not lack at all.
Thank you.
It's really good.
So the IBUs and ABVs.
So 5.5% alcohol, and if I remember correctly, it's like 19 to 25 IBUs.
Okay.
So really, this kind of fits into your realm of a all-day drinker.
Yeah. Well, I could drink this all day.
I think that one I kegged up back in November. So because that's the keg that we have on. That was like the partial keg when I was filling these, and so I was like, all right, I just put it on here so I have something to drink. And it also ends up being a good test because I'll drink 1 or 2 a month. And over the last few months, it's like, all right, well, we can still taste that. So that's been sitting here on draft for, cold, obviously, but since November.
Wow. Yeah.
So-
No, it's
Wow, tastes great.
a great taste.
So okay? Your beers. You said that Borealis is number 1. Mm-hmm. Is this number 2?
No, actually, because people don't know how to say Kolsch. And I don't know if it's flippant, but like there's always kind of an education aspect when you're going after some of these. People are like, oh, I don't know what a Kolsch is. I'd rather drink a lager. Do you have any something, like you get these questions from people like we just did a training today for the bar staff down at the Curb in Meridian, and they say they get people to come in here and it's like, what's your hoppiest beer? And it's like, or what? Oh, I don't like lagers. Can I have that Pilsner? And it's like, well, yes, but anyway, So as a beer nerd, it just breaks my brain. But we also have to, and Shelly's really good about it's like, shut up, you know too much. And like, because what people are asking is not the words they're saying.
Yeah.
They're not asking for your hoppiest beer. They're asking for, because hoppy has somehow been conflated with bitterness, whereas or people want a I don't like craft beer because I don't like bitter. Well, craft beer got lumped in with like IPA is craft beer. Craft beer is
Right.
IPA. It's like a square rectangle thing. Not all squares are rectangles. Not all or whatever geometry. All squares are rectangles, but not all rectangles are squares.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or no rectangles. Anyway, whatever.
You're a chemistry guy.
I'm a chemistry guy. Yeah. So that's that's kind of the thing with Kolsch. It hasn't been super popular, but it also we just hopped on with Watkins back in November. Watkins Distribution. and they've been a huge help in getting us out, helping me stay in the brewery where I belong, and helping us get some of our beers out. But again, that was November, so it's been dark beer season. This will be ready for light beer season, and then everyone will be on patios and drinking, 5 or 6 at a time. And it's like, you don't want my 8% Baltic Porter, when you're sitting on a 100-degree patio.
Yeah.
I mean, some people might, but so this will be, hopefully will take off come spring. And I would say our next most popular beer has been our Cloud of Curiosity Hazy IPA. But it's also a hazy IPA. So that's it's also the most popular style in the country right now. So it's kind of hard. The fact that the Baltic Porter took off as much as it did was actually quite surprising because it's kind of a bitch to brew.
And what makes it a bitch to brew?
It is, my mash tun is top full. I can't stir it very fast or it overflows. I have to fill my boil kettle all the way and then have to boil it for 3 hours and then
Damn.
And
Wow.
I mean, it really gets the caramelization. That's part of the process, and it turns out really good every time. But it's a 12-hour brew day.
Oh, wow.
Damn.
So for me, and then
And
I
how big a
clean up.
batch are you brewing when you brew?
3 barrels.
Okay.
So that's about 100 gallons.
Okay.
That we'll get in kegs at a time.
Nice.
So really, honestly, you look at porters around the valley, there's not too many brewers that do the porter.
You go. I mean, you guys look like you've been drinking beer longer than me. But
The Grey give it away.
I'm starting to earn mine. But back in the day, I'm back in the day 20 years ago, like you always had to have at least 5 beers. You had an IPA, you had a light beer, an amber ale, maybe a brown, but you had to have a porter.
Right.
And there were like those 5. Now it's like IPA, fruity smoothie sour, and then like pastry stout, like those things. But then I was like, all right, we need to have a dark beer. I had this recipe from home brewing, all these years ago. And before we started rolling, I was telling you guys, like, the system is really just an up-jumped homebrew system, direct fire and everything like that. So it was really easy to scale up that recipe. And again, we have here in Boise, we have really good water for making brown ales, ambers, and porters and stouts. So that made it a really easy starting point.
Okay.
And so obviously since then we've been playing with stuff, but yeah. So those
Very
are
good.
those are our. We have a good West Coast IPA as well, the Flight of Fancy. We have a. We just released at Destination Beer last weekend the Doomsday Dunkel with End of the World Provisions coffee. It is a cold brew infused Dunkel,
Wow.
and not a Dunkel Weiss because we didn't use wheat, but the 6% easy drinker, a lot of good coffee flavors to it, and that should be hitting bars and restaurants here soon as well.
Very good. So tell us about Destination Beer. A lot of people went up for it.
Yeah, it was sold out on Saturday.
What did you take up there?
We took up our Kolsch, the Baltic Porter, and then the Doomsday Dunkel.
And just sell out?
Surprisingly, we didn't, but I think we brought up more than we needed to also. And weather was really good this year. What Shelley and I like so much about Destination Beer, and we attended it before we bought the brewery, is it's a lot of industry folks. A lot of the actual brewers, the owners, those folks, people that are making decisions, people that actually know about the beer, not just volunteers or sales reps, which makes it more interesting for me. Mm-hmm. Plus, you get a little mini vacation out of it.
Sure.
Play in the snow and wander around McCall drunk.
A little bit
Yeah,
chilly
there's a
up
lot of
there
drink-
usually.
What
but-
was your most popular there?
It was the Doomsday Dunkel because it was like nothing else that was out there. People like the Kolsch too, but again, it's winter, it's cold. People kind of were using the Kolsch more as a palate cleanser rather than this is what they're drinking. And then there's a lot of dark beers. There were a lot of dark beers up there. People had the habanero cream ale, or they had some of these barrel aged stuff, or big IPAs, and so having that Kolsch was kind of nice. But people loved our Baltic Porter. I think that we went through more of that because we had that on both days, and then we had that Doomsday Dunkel was definitely a hit.
Huh. That's awesome.
All that aside, what is your favorite style of beer to drink? Just
Boy, to drink, it really depends on what we're doing. Like we did this training today, and it's like beer is so much more diverse than I think wine is, and I'll probably get some hate for that. But like with wine, I think you really only have like two levers you can play with. You can either change the grapes, you can change time. I mean, obviously there's additives and techniques and stuff like that.
Yeah, be careful. You're stepping on.
Vintners will but I will say that with beer, there's really only four knobs you can play with, and that's the water, yeast, barley, and hops. So, and again, there's all the additives, there's all the different processes. You can cold filter, you can lager, you can, temperature. Like, yes, there is all those process tweaks that we can do too. But as far as ingredients goes, like grapes, you're using grapes, right, for wine. You can change the variety of grape you're using. Well, with beer, your two main ingredients are water or barley and hops. So you have different varieties of both of those,
Right.
and then you have all the different processes that you can do with them. But then also, like, water chemistry and water adjustments are not as prevalent for wine because mostly you're just using grape juice. Now, obviously, that means the land and the terroir and the weather and stuff affects wine a lot more than it does beer. But then you also have all the different yeast strains. Like, obviously the yeast strain that's in my Borealis Baltic Porter is different than the one that's in our hazy IPA. But those are two different yeast strains. So you have a third ingredient that you can play with very drastically. You can take the same hops, the same malt, the same processes, and add two different yeast to get two different beers. Like, you use a Weihenstephaner strain for a lager, you could use some crazy hef yeast, you can use sour yeasts, then all the lactobacillus. Now you can do different bacteria bugs. Wine doesn't do that. So I think that's when I think beer is more versatile than wine is. And so when you go to like food pairings and things like that, or like just what you're doing, when I'm mowing the lawn and it's 105 degrees out, I'm going to be drinking a different beer than when I'm up in McCall in a snowsuit.
Yeah.
And it's going to be a different beer that I drink when I'm downtown versus different beer that I'm going to drink when I'm having a nice dinner versus a burger and fries. It's going to be a different beer that I'm going to drink with, if we're sitting around watching the game versus watching a Marvel movie. So I don't watch too many fancy movies, so I'm trying to think of an example. Right. But so I think that my favorite kind of beer is whatever beer that fits the mood and surroundings that I'm in.
Motherfucker, that's a good answer.
Yeah.
I never expect that. Usually it's like,
I like
hazies.
Yeah, I like a hazy or
I like IPA.
Yeah.
I thought I was a complicated drinker, but I think he's got me beat. I'm pretty simple.
I think we got a couple takeaways just from that.
Honestly, on a hot day, I'll have whatever I'm hankering for. I guess that makes me a little bit hillbillyish, but
hold on. I'm going to stop you. Your hanker is an IPA.
That's why I just said, well, not all the time. I told you I drink some stouts and stuff, and
you can drink a stout after mowing the lawn.
I'm not allowed.
You could.
Honestly, I'm not allowed.
But he won't.
No, probably not. Do you ever like open up a Coors Light?
Oh yeah,
Bud Light.
Oh yeah. I mean, Miller Lite's kind of my go-to cheap beer. But you're on the river. We'll do float in the river and like, all right, it's Coors Lights, Coors Latte. All those those memes.
Bush latte.
But you're talking about Ronier. Vitamin R.
Yeah. Right?
That's home country. And so that too. Like it depends. Actually, Kevin Davey from Gold Dot Brewing and Heater Allen there in Oregon. He was the founding brewer at Wayfinder Brewing, and so they're lager brewery, and he is like one of the lager experts. And I remember him talking one time. I was at a meetup. This is 8 years ago, but he was saying is like when they made their Wayfinder 6, he's like, I would get home after brewing these true to style German Czech lagers and all day. I think go home and drink Miller Lite. Because he's like, all right, I just want something easy to drink. I just want a beer.
Yeah. Right.
And so he's like, well, why don't we make one? And so he made an American adjunct lager, Wayfinder 6. Not a commercial for them, but like yeah, you can. It's actually really hard to do. Like those beers, as much as people rag on them, they're really hard to make at a small scale.
Yeah.
Like the only way you can make them is 3 million barrels at a time, it seems like.
Right.
But there's, they're still crushable and 12-ounce can,
Yeah.
Yeah. So
Yeah. Sorry, Mike, I got to jump in here really quick.
okay. I'll forget what I wanted to say.
No.
You know me.
I tried to lager, one of my first experiences home brewing, I tried to lager a beer with.
You forgot about it?
I wish I could. I tried to lager it with a 1970s fridge, and that doesn't work. So it ended up just being an ale. It wasn't bad, but not a true lager.
You lagered it. You tried to lager it. You weren't able to keep temperature control, so you said it turned out as an ale?
Yeah. It tasted more like an ale than a lager.
Okay. Did you use lager yeast?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it was still a lager. It might have been a bad lager.
Right. It was
still technically
it was a bad
lager.
lager.
So keep in mind, he's now doing a podcast and
Right.
not brewing beer.
Okay.
Right.
There's a reason.
But this podcast, I've been listening to you. I've been interviewing folks that are, they're brewing industry. There's people that are interested in beer stuff. And I'm not going to let something like, oh, I tried to brew a lager, but now it's an ale. I'm not going to let that comment slide.
Right.
You have a podcast called MT Cans.
Right.
It's not, it's a beer podcast. We're not going to let
It
that
is a
shit
beer
slide.
podcast. We're trying to educate people. Mike, go. You didn't forget, right?
I did. Let's move on.
Fuck.
It wasn't
Yeah,
worth it. Come on.
Call you out on your bullshit.
Wow. I guess so.
Alliteration.
All right. So
More like inebriation.
so you're bachelor of science in chemistry. Mm-hmm. How does that transition to, hey, let's just start brewing beer?
So we can back up. So I started brewing beer like a lot of folks did because I was broke in college. And I couldn't afford the beers that I wanted to drink. And so it was available. It was Portland. It's available in Portland back in 2006. But I couldn't afford it. And also the idea of it is oh, this is cool. I can make something that my friends and I can get drunk on. This is fun. And, started on the stove, chilling in the sink, that whole thing. My buddy Darren got me started on it, and I ended up taking it a lot further than he did, obviously. But, me and my friends always really liked these different styles, or we'd find a recipe. It's hey, I want to try to brew a beer with this ingredient, or I want to brew this style. I just had it at this bar and I want to try to do it. And not even that we weren't even looking at the different knockoff recipes. We weren't looking at clone recipes. We were just make something up. But
Right.
a lot of them were bad. Dumped had a lot of Band-Aid beers and infections and but as one does. But as far as taking that science background that I have from my professional life and applying it to brewing, there's a lot of science in brewing, but there's not there's a lot of alchemy in it too. There's a lot of art behind it, because even though I know generally what's happening in these tanks right now, I know generally the amount of time it's going to take, the amount of sugars that are in it, and all this, all these calculations that we can do, and all the water chemistry and hop chemistry and all the stuff that we've learned really in the last 20 years of professional brewing. That was really fascinating to me. And so I would always read up on stuff. Oh, hey, this new white paper came out about hop aroma compounds and the thiols and thiolized yeasts and some of that stuff. I was around OSU when a lot of that olfactory gas chromatography was going on, or olfactory mass spectrometry was going on to identify hop aroma compounds. And so to me, that's fascinating. To you guys, it might sound like a lot of words, but and so that's kind of where I fell in love with it, was this combination of art and science. And that even though, why did it all of a sudden stop for a second and then go more? It should be fermenting at a regular rate, but again, we don't know exactly what's going on. We have an idea. And so in that gray area, that's where the art comes in. And that's where the expression of a brewer comes in. That's where the expression of the ingredients can come in. And it's kind of, there's actually a good Instagram page called Wort Wrangler, and they're super fun. If you love the industry, follow them. But I think it's a really good a really good analogy for as a brewer. Like all you're doing is wrangling wort. Like it does its own thing, but you're trying to get it to go a certain way.
Yeah.
So
That's cool. And I think that's why your beer tastes really good.
So where did you go to school?
I went to school at Portland State.
I do believe Boise State has played Portland State in football a few times.
Yeah.
I'm surprised Portland State has a football team.
Most people are.
So Portland, we've been talking about Portland area. Is that where you're from?
Yeah, I mean, I grew up south of Portland. I don't claim it as much as Shelley does, but it is Beervana. You know, some of the best craft breweries came out of there. You think Widmer, or the first also, but also some of the best, or some of the best. Breakside, like you go to Breakside's tap room there in Southeast, and it's just a wall of medals. You know, and it's kind of mind-boggling. Their Oregon Brewers Guild is second to none. Like they had COVID kind of accelerated, I think, a lot of the closures that should have happened or that would have happened in the next 5 years anyway. But there's still some really great breweries. It's some of the best water you can brew with. Like it literally comes out of the sky and goes into your beer. Like that's Bull Run water, and they also have access to all of the Willamette Valley hops and all of Yakima Valley hops, and then also the Eastern Oregon grain. So you have this coalescence of these great ingredients to make good beer. And I mean, Y East Labs is in Hood River. You had Full Sail, you had Portland Brewing, you had Bridgeport Brewing, Widmer Brewing. So these guys really got that craft off the ground, and then you have a market for it. So now it actually makes sense for you to start a craft brewery in this area because they have those resources. Like Widmer would offer free lab testing for any brewery that's in the area. Like you could just send them a sample and they can do their full lab analysis if they had room. And they might tell you, it's like, oh, we're full right now, but come back next week. Like, and you do it for free. Otherwise, you'd have to pay a lot of money to get that equipment. And chemists, as an employee, aren't cheap either.
So one of the questions that I had was, what makes your beer stand out from others? And I'm going to tell you, after having a beer sitting here, I don't need to ask that question. It's a nice full body beer, so I don't need to ask that question.
Oh, thank you. I mean I think beer standing out, like good beer will stand out anywhere, but I think the idea is just to make beer flavored beer, make good beer, and people will want it. Mm-hmm. I don't think you need to be doing this crazy niche-y thing. Another podcast I listened to by Kelly Meyer, he likes the phrase niches get stitches. So another good thing, it's like, hey, people are like, what kind of beer do you make? I make beer flavored beer. Right. I want to make a good IPA, a good West Coast IPA, a good East Coast IPA, a good Kolsch, a good Pilsner, a good, I just want to make good beer. I like making the beer. My beer is going to taste different than someone at like Bryce at Brown Beard or Rob at Burt's or, Beth at Bear Island or Alex now, she's the brewer. It's going to taste different. We could all make the same recipe. It's going to taste different.
Right.
Because we're all going to have our little thumbprint on it. I mean, just like you can take 5 painters and make them paint the same thing. It's going to look different.
Well, the ALS, I can't remember what they call that, but the beer that like several breweries are making. Wish I could remember the name of that. It's an ALS for Alzheimer's or something.
Yeah.
It's the same recipe, but different breweries brew it. I do believe I've had a couple different ones, and they are.
Well, Sierra Nevada did that when they had the fires,
right?
And I think that's the cool part about brewing is, again, it isn't like the BJCP and all these organizations do their best to try to narrow it down to be like, this is what an IPA is. Right. It's like cool, but no one ever drives just the speed limit either. So it's not,
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think that's well said.
Yeah. Okay. So you and Shelley, Shelley's your wife, for those who don't know.
Close enough. And she'll argue that point, but
what is her role in this whole business?
The way we like to put it is, my job is to make good beer. Her job is to make it look like I make good beer. Like, because we, as as much as a lot of folks and a lot of folks listening to this, they're local here in Boise. They've heard of the garage that Bear Island Brewing started in,
Right.
And when they moved to their nice facility there off of Fairview, in the old firehouse, they didn't need the old garage brewery anymore, and we were the ones that took it over. And so we are brewing literally out of a garage. We're sitting here in a 2-car garage.
It doesn't seem like a garage.
Minus the garage door behind you. But,
Other than that,
if you face the tanks, then yeah, it doesn't look like a garage. But so we also didn't want it to. It was a big point for her to say no. We don't want to just be the garage brewery.
Mm-hmm.
Like I want people to look at the the tap handle, the can, our social media, all that kind of stuff. Our tap room eventually when you get one. I want us to look at that and be like, oh, they have really good beer. And then be like, oh, shit, they're out of a garage. Like, I don't want it to be like, oh, this is really good for a garage beer.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's... So part of that is, I mean, you taste with your eyes first. And part of that starts even when you're looking at the brand of a beer. Mm-hmm. If you're looking at a can and it's brown and it says butthole beer, and then you're like, oh, I don't know, like... it's going to already affect your psychology of what that beer is going to be, and the style of art on the can, all that kind of stuff. Like it does all affect your perception of what a beer is. So I do think brand, as much as it as a brewer, it's like no, brand shouldn't matter. It should be just the beer and the purity of the process and all this kind of stuff. But it does affect things.
so I got a quick little story here. Probably shouldn't tell it, but I went to the co-op with my daughter, and I was looking for some beer, some good beer.
They have good beers.
And I said, hey, what do you think? And she's like, hey, do that one. And it was kind of a bright can, flashy, and it tasted like ass. So it's like, yeah, just because it's a bright, flashy can doesn't mean it's really good.
But you still bought it.
I did buy it, and I found out that it's
You may not buy it
ass.
again.
No.
but you
Andy's
still
here
bought
talking
it.
about how bad it was.
Right. So honestly, back in the day of Bear Island, for me, I knew they came out of the garage, but that never really like kind of stuck into my head like, ooh, garage beer.
Yeah.
No, I still drank their beer just like anybody else's. When I think of garage beer, I think of me with my turkey fryer in the garage brewing beer that way. And that is truly garage beer.
Yeah.
This is if anybody were to see this, which we'll probably get some pics and post it, but if anybody were to see this, you take a look at it, it's not garage beer.
It's a brewery.
Right.
Yeah, it's a fully licensed commercial brew house.
Yeah.
And we have all the licenses hang up on the wall. Like it's legit. And Beth and Steve had to do a lot of work to get this up and running. Like we're fortunate that, we were in the right place at the right time to be able to take this thing over. But it's really them that started this whole thing,
Right.
that allowed this to happen, this space in particular. But
How long have you had it, Adam?
going on 2 years now, almost 2 years.
Okay.
Brewing for about a year and a half. We had to get all a lot of the transfers and licensing figured out first, and then I did a bunch of test batches that didn't make it to the public. So, as any good professional brewer tell you, I've dumped more beer than anyone's ever drank in the world. So,
I find it quite amazing that there's a brewery in the middle of a residential neighborhood. Mm-hmm. So, hats off to them to actually making that happen.
yes.
So, do you live?
And their neighbors are all super cool. Like that was one of the first things we did. Moved in. It's like Beth took us around. It's like, hey, here's your new neighbors. Like they're gonna be brewing out of the garage again. And without fail, every one of them was like, oh, that's great. Let me know when you're brewing.
You need someone to taste.
Oh yeah, well the neighbor behind us over here, he'll just like hang a pitcher over the fence and be like, all right, here you go. It's easy to bribe people with good beer though. So
Yeah.
and
Property value went up.
So
So you don't live here, do you?
oh yeah,
Do you?
yeah. The commute's really nice.
Fucking sweet.
Yeah.
I can't even believe it.
So
So
I don't even go downstairs like Gem State does. We just talked.
Right,
We just
right.
talked to Chris yesterday
Okay, yeah.
or Wednesday, and So I mean, they're doing the same thing too. He's telling us like, yeah, if I think I forgot to turn off the CO2 or something, you just throw his slippers and run downstairs checking. I've done it a couple times. Or something gets out of temperature or something like that. It'll start squealing at us, and be sitting there watching TV at 8:00 at night. And wait, I hear something, and then run out here, fix it, go back and watch a movie.
Yeah, that's much better than having to drive downtown or something like that.
Oh yeah,
Fucking crazy.
it's probably saved me many CO2 tank refills and probably many temperature issues, and so yeah, it's been nice.
Yeah, I don't think I could talk Brandy into letting me.
No,
brewery in our
I think
house.
she really struggles with even the beer over the fence. And
I don't think you could. I don't think you could convince the ABC about it either.
No, I don't think I could.
We had a gap in the bubbling too. For how are you guys doing on beers? You want another beer?
Well,
yeah, let's take
so
five.
so as part of this podcast, I think one of the new things that I started doing was sharing beers.
Okay,
So I got a beer for you.
certainly. Love to try.
Just recently, one of my listeners and also had him on the podcast, and I think he's going to come up in a month or so and be a co-host, is Sidehouse Brewing.
Okay, awesome.
He lives down in Salt Lake, and he brews his own beer, and he's really good at it. Well, he sent me a care package. So let me grab these real quick.
All right.
Like I said, we got this beer. This is from Red Rock Brewery.
Yes, the Bella Rosa.
Have you had it?
No, actually,
Okay,
Marcos from Loose Screw brought one up to Destination Beer, but he drank it at the hot springs and didn't share it with us.
Nice.
So I'm going to
nice
throw
of
him
him.
under the bus and be like, damn it, why didn't you share one?
Yeah, well, I'm going to share one. This is all yours. This is from Red Rock Brewing in Utah.
Yeah, and they use the pink hops, right? That's because if I remember, it was the partnership with Mill 95.
Right. Mill
And
95.
5% Pilsner. The pouring beer sounds followed by the fermentation sounds. It's good.
Doesn't get any more beer than this.
Yeah.
It's like ASMR for bearded dudes.
So yeah, Joe sent this up to me, Sidehouse, and fucking hell of a guy sent me a 4-pack. These were two of them. So I thought I'd share this with you, and we could try it and see what we think. But
That's delicious. That's a great Pilsner. Nice white creamy
oh
head.
damn,
Those pink hops are actually
wow.
something different.
Yeah.
They're them and the Zappa hops that Mill 95 is getting are probably two of the wildest hops I've ever tried since. I mean, to me, they're as different as like when Galaxy first came out, or like the Equinaut. When those first came out, like Equinaut isn't really used as much anymore, but like when it came out, it was like, whoa, like this is really different. It's not just a Citra variant or a Simcoe variant or like a Cascade variant. Like I forget it. The guys from Mill 95 were up at Destination Beer. Obviously, they're one of the big sponsors, so they told me about it, but I don't want to mess it up on podcast. Having one of them on you said you went up, did the tour of their facility, but like have like one of their hop breeders or one of the hop growers actually talk about it too would be kind of fascinating. Just from that selfishly from a scientist, from a brewer standpoint, sometimes it is cool to have that higher level conversation. And I've been quoted in saying that like, if a genie gave me 3 wishes, one of them would certainly be that beer didn't make me drunk, because then I could drink more of it and not have to worry about it. I could just drink beer all day long. Maybe if not, I wish beer didn't make me drunk. And the second wish would be beer didn't make me fat. But
there you go.
But then and if I wanted to get drunk, I'd just drink whiskey. But
What would the third wish be?
I'll keep that private. It's a different podcast.
Right.
But and also like doing it in a pilsner. I love this idea of dry hopping pilsners, like using these single hop lagers as a way to showcase a hop rather than doing like a smash pale ale.
Right.
They're doing a smash lager essentially.
Yeah.
I mean, instead of using two row, they're using pilsner. Instead of using ale yeast, they're using lager yeast. Golden. No pun intended. But the by using that by using these hops in the more delicate flavors, you can actually get more of these delicate flavors that are coming out of these hops, and I think it's just excellent.
Well, I think that's a great way to describe it too.
Yeah, I mean, not too long ago, Brown Beer did a beer, an IPA with the pink hop, and it smelled fantastic in the bag. The hops smell fantastic. Made the beer, tasted the beer. That smell doesn't come across.
Yeah.
This one, maybe just because there's a little bit less in here than an IPA,
Yeah.
maybe it comes out a little bit better, but this tastes really good.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, it could be the temperature that Bryce used, or the fermentation, the yeast, or even just, I mean, there's so many different, the water chemistry. Water chemistry would be huge.
Right.
The water chemistry down in Utah is so much different than it is here.
Right.
One of the things that we do here is actually a lot of our lighter beers, and our West Coast IPA that we'll try, we use reverse osmosis filter for for that water. We don't use it for all of our beers. Like the Baltic Porter, again, I don't really need to because the water chemistry is already suited for that. I don't need to go down to zero as much.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. But so that could be it too.
Yeah.
There are so many things that you can do, and so many things that you can have control of, but maybe you don't. Like some of the temperature controls that I have, my thermometers are not all calibrated the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so I have to correct for each little one of them. And it's like, all right, well, I'm 2 degrees warmer on this one, I'm 3 degrees warmer here. It's like, it's a pain, but again, that kind of goes to there is the perfect way to brew, and then there's the way you can brew and make good beer. You can make great beer. I say you can make great beer on any system. Consistency would be an issue if you don't have a good system.
Yeah.
So
So
making that great beer twice.
have you had Western's Pink, the beer that they use the pink hop in?
I believe I have, but it's been a minute.
I don't think I have not had it. I would like to. I don't know why I haven't yet, but I haven't done it yet. But I would like to,
Maybe
just to see.
maybe afterwards we could go taste it.
I don't even know if they have it on tap yet.
Oh, all right.
It's more of a seasonal type of thing. Seems like.
Well, I mean, you got to figure taking a risk on one of these hops, especially at a bigger brewery.
Oh, yeah.
I can, for me to take a risk on a beer, or Bryce to take a risk on a beer, is a lot lower overhead than someone like Sockeye.
Right. Oh yeah.
If they're going to make the same pilsner, you don't have as many ingredients in a pilsner as you do, but you have a lot of tank time, and tank time is money, and that plays into more like the business of brewing and stuff like that. And so, luckily I'm here by myself, low overhead. I can do some of that stuff. Bryce has got a great setup because it's just like, all right, here's my 2 kegs of it, or 4
Right.
now, goes through his tap room, and he gets that direct feedback. So it is very cool.
Yeah.
So we can try stuff. If fuck it, we have to dump it, that's, a couple $100 down the drain, not tens of thousands.
Right.
So
Zithos hops.
Zithos.
Have you heard of it?
I think I have. Is that the Neo Mexicanus?
It's
one
been
of
around
those?
for a while.
Okay, then probably not. Because that's Zappa is the other one. That Kolsch has a little bit of Zappa in it, and again kind of a wild. It's actually a wild strain of hop that they discovered in New Mexico.
Oh, okay.
And then they started breeding it up and stuff. But yeah, Zithos, I haven't worked with. I haven't really tried.
Hey, I just had a thought, and I don't, how I am. If I'm going to drink
your
all
thoughts
day,
don't come very often.
I know, but I forget them. So I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But if I'm going to drink all day, I would rather drink his beer than this.
Really?
Yeah.
Then the
So what I would say then, as with that, like, what would be the difference?
This is, for me, almost too much flavor compared
Okay.
to your Kolsch. And if I'm going to be drinking, several beers throughout the day, I think I would prefer to drink the one that you gave us when we came versus this.
The way I would compare the two as a brewer, I guess, I'm not that I'm anything special, that my Kolsch has more bread and biscuit type flavors, less on the hops. It's also, since it's been old, it's not, hops fall off over time. Like, you could set this beer in your fridge for 6 months and it's going to taste different. As good as they did when they can, it's still going to fall off. May not fall off as quick as if they did a bad job, but it is going to change over time, and normally not for the better with a hop forward beer.
Yeah.
And so with lagering, with I don't want to say ageable beers, but like these with a Kolsch, there's not many hops there to begin with, and so there's not, like, that hop flavor isn't really going to change that much, and it's more of a malt focused. It's not really even a malt focused style, but Jeremy from Homebrew Stuff would beat me for saying that, but but like that, but it is more of that, the bread, the biscuit, the honey like finish.
Yeah.
That would be more towards your flavor, rather than, like, probably what you and I are getting is, like, we like that the hop citrus. It's got some really, like, berry notes to it.
Yeah.
Not the tropical, like, guava type stuff, but it's more like almost strawberry, raspberry, some of that gooseberry. If that, if you ever had one of those type of flavors, rather than a traditional hop. I don't get much bitterness from it, but it is there. It's in the dryness, but that's also a dryness in the Pilsner, which isn't in the Kolsch.
Okay.
So.
yeah, they're just two totally different beers.
True.
Yeah. But I'm just
But those, I had an old professor at Portland State. His name is Peter Bogosian, and he's a philosophy professor, ethics professor, and he always talked about that everyone is infallible in their own taste. And because I can't tell you that, that's wrong, that you don't like this Pilsner, like, because you're like, no, it's what I like. It doesn't matter if I can say that my beer is technically perfect or whatever. It's like, cool, I don't like it. I don't care. Like, like, I can't tell you that you don't like chocolate ice cream. I can tell you that, like, vanilla sells more units per annum. That's objective. But everyone's infallible in their own taste. People are like, I don't like IPAs. Cool. There's many other beers. There's Pilsners. There's Porters. There's, smoothies, sours. Like, beer has so many different things. Beer has something for everybody.
beer and ice cream, they have a lot in common, huh?
If you do it wrong enough.
Wow.
So lactose and cream, and add sugar and residual sugar, and
Both make you fat.
both make you fat if you drink too much of them.
So why did you come to Boise? I mean, Portland is like one of the beer meccas. So why Boise?
Well, why did I leave Portland is because of Portland, but
Whole different podcast again.
right. But it was more so like the way I was seeing it is like, in order to do the things I wanted to do, people had already done it, and I didn't want to move past the Rockies. I wanted to move out of my hometown essentially, and kind of start my own thing, kind of grow up out of, I still hang out with the same friends from high school, and it's like, I'd be like trying to do this cool new thing, and they'd be like, oh, remember that time where you like flubbed your English test in 8th grade in front of the class? And I was like, I don't even remember me doing that, so why do you bring it up? And it's, anyway, so it's like, move out, have a fresh start, but trying to look at places west of the Rockies that had a good job market, had access to the outdoors, that had good weather, i.e. not Phoenix. I don't count 120 degrees for 3 months to be good weather. But then looking at like Missoula or Spokane or any of those, I'm like, okay, they're good, but like they're they're good in the recreation and they're cool towns, but they don't have like the job market. When I moved out here, I didn't have a job, so I actually was working semiconductors at the time. So I got a job at Micron and was able to move out with that. So that was end of 2019. So we kind of beat the rush, but
Wow.
and so fast forward and pivoted into brewing. So
But then how did you, okay, so here we are sitting in the garage, the brewery. How did that happen? I mean, it almost
you don't have a
seems
time
like
frame
it
on
was
this
a,
podcast, do you? It's not like commercial break. Like,
well, it just seems like like all the stars aligned for you to make this happen. They moved out, you moved in. I mean, it's just
yes, it was not just luck is a combination of preparation and timing. It's one of my sayings. I'm full of these
Wow.
quotes. And so we actually were living just 2 blocks from this place.
no shit.
Oh, okay.
And we had seen, we became friends with our friend David. We call him our one friend David. He was like the first friend we met because we moved out here. I started at Micron end of 19. Shelly moved out, or I moved out in August. She moved out in November, and we kind of high class homeless bounced on Airbnbs for 3 months until we were able to buy a place.
Wow.
Sold my house in Oregon, and made a lot of money on that. And so I was able to move into this duplex over here and buy this duplex. And then in January of 2020, then March hits and COVID happens.
Yep.
And then it's like, oh, well, shit, what do we do? And so we had some furniture left that we had brought over from Oregon and we didn't need anymore. Also funny story, but not relevant to the podcast. David ends up buying this furniture, and it's like he comes over wearing a Rogue hat and a 10-barrel T-shirt. And I'm like, hey, you like beer? And he's like, yeah. It's like, do you want some? And he's like, I'm like home brewing or something. So, and because then there was nowhere to go, everything was shut down. It was like he's
Right.
lives a quarter mile away. He's like, all right, I'm just bringing him and his dog come over, and we just sit in the driveway and drink beer. And he grew up with Marcos from Loose Screw. In Portland, I had started a contract quality control lab for craft breweries. So did that for a few years. Unsuccessfully, unfortunately, but then
Because you were unsuccessful, or because the breweries were unsuccessful?
I was
or-
unsuccessful. I'm a better scientist than a salesman. So
Okay. All right. Just want to
so-
make sure.
So yeah, it was, and I was trying to do it by myself, and it was like, oh well. But long story short, it was like I know more than the average bear kind of thing when it comes to brewing. I call myself the highest tech home brewer in the world because I have a spectrophotometer and a GCMS in a trailer that I use for beer. And so have all this knowledge and expertise, but I never wanted to start a brewery because from that business, I saw how much of a pain in the ass it is to start a brewery. And I was like, I never want to do that until I retire. Figured that was going to be a retirement gig. Well, fast forward to 2 years, this place comes to the market. Everyone that we met out here is like, hey, there's a brewery for sale with a house. It's in your neighborhood. And it's like, well. And then Shelly said, like, what does it look like? And that's one of our, I guess, relationship advice things is we never say no to an idea. It's always, what would that look like? And it might look like we have to sell everything and give up everything we're doing right now to go do it, but that's what it would look like. It's like, well, we're not going to do that. So, but this was like, all right, well, could we make this happen? And like, we were luckily in a spot because of the way COVID and ramped up all the inflation, which ramped up the cost of housing, which, again, all of that stuff that happened to this area, we luckily were able to capitalize on that in order to buy this brewery. And again, Beth and Steve wanted to sell it to someone who was local, who had the expertise to start a brewery, but it had to be someone that wasn't already in the industry. Because it's like, all right, well, if I already have my brewery, I'm not
Right.
going to go buy another one. Unless you're Jake Black, but they're all on a different scale than I am for sure. And but they, so hey, what would that look like? And I remember it was actually at Freshtival in 2021
Wow. Okay.
that we had sent an email to Jeff, who is the actually Jeff Wills was the realtor that helped Beth and Steve buy the place. Was also helping them sell it. And so sent him an email and Beth and Steve an email and was like, hey, like, so we're interested, but we like it's it's going to be a while before we can actually try to close on this thing because of like refinances and timelines and all the details. But anyway, we just like mentioned it to him. So I go to Festival just like a volunteer because it's a cool beer fest. And literally, people were already coming up to me and be like, "Hey, so you're buying Beth and Steve's house?" And I'm like, "No, we haven't even put in an offer yet. Like, wait a second." and so then, long story short, we ended up closing on the place in April of 22. Started brewing in August of 22. Well, that means that I didn't really have time to get a fresh hop beer together, but still attended Festival, and so in Festival of 22, we had actually bought the place. We had a brand, we had a brewery, I was brewing, I had, we had a brewery. We just weren't pouring at Festival. And so we were like, "Oh, that's really cool. Like, you bought Beth and Steve's house." And I was like, you bought the Bear Island house. And but then in 23, this year, we actually did our backyard vines fresh hop beer with hops grown in the backyard here.
Nice.
And also from some of the other home brewers in the Snake River Homebrew Club. And so that was our backyard vines fresh hop pale ale. And so we were actually able to pour that at Festival. So it kind of came full circle.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's awesome.
So kind of a fun story about how we, the evolution of our journey with the space.
So you are a full-time brewer now?
Yes. Yep.
That's
I got
awesome.
laid off at Micron last year, which again, it was, people are like, "Oh, I'm so sorry you got laid off." It's like, well,
Right.
I'm not.
Yeah,
I have
all
more
right.
time.
I have more time to brew. I can, and then
Good for you.
So, yeah.
That is awesome. That's a neat story. Thank you for sharing.
it's been a wild ride. The entrepreneurship is one of those things that's like the best thing. One of the best things is that no one's telling you what to do, but one of the worst things is that no one's telling you what to do.
Right.
And it's just like, what do I do now?
So they've heard us talk a lot about your beers, and I'm sorry, but you talk a little bit too much about your beers, to be honest. But
Wow.
don't you think?
Kicked out
I'll
of the
take it.
garage.
I mean-
He's kind of long-winded.
I am.
I mean,
am.
all right.
Ask anybody.
Please don't ever start one of your stories with, this is just a short story, or I'll give you the short version of it because it didn't work.
All right. Fair enough.
It was a good story.
It was good, but it wasn't short.
No.
It's not short.
It could have been longer.
Could be.
Wow.
Good thing I know how to edit. I'm kidding.
It's gonna
We would never edit the good stuff.
No, that's a great story, and
Edit all the
I'm
bullshit.
glad we were able to be here to have you share it with us. Where do people find your beer?
God, that's the number one question we get asked anywhere we're at because we don't have a tap room, and obviously, like, we're able to produce out of this garage, but due to licensing and stuff, we're not allowed to have a
Right.
tap room here. Nor would I want it really, because then you'd be,
Not at
like,
your house.
Yeah.
and it's so bars and restaurants around town. Like I said, we're distributed by Watkins, so we have kind of a bigger reach now. But the best way to try to find us is go to those beer focused places. Because when I make a batch of beer, I make 18 sixtels. I make 12 quarter barrels, or at 6 half barrels. So if a restaurant gets a keg, that's one of 12 or one of 18 of that batch, and sometimes of that beer, because again, it's like I got to brew the other ones. I got to brew more Baltic Porter. I got to brew more IPA. When that Dunkel is out, I don't know when I'm going to brew it again, because it's going to. I've got to brew all the other beers too, and so I think the short answer to that question is would be beer focused bars and restaurants. Would be the best place to try to find us. And if they don't have us, just bother them, and they can just contact their sales rep, or even contact us. They can write us an email and be like, "Hey, we want you in our bar because this is the one I always go to," and we'll go in there and make an effort to get in there on draft.
Well, I think earlier you said you were doing a training at the Curb.
Yes.
I mean,
They have
that's
our-
a popular place. So obviously they can find your beer there.
Yep. They have our Cloudy Curiosity Hazy IPA. They're doing a special with it for Super Bowl on
nice.
Sunday, so that'll be fun. But I think Heritage Hop House, Heritage Social, Old State Saloon and Eagle, Bitter Creek, Diablo, Red Feather downtown, places like Matlack's, places like Hope and Ross, Homebrew Stuff. Those are places we can find us probably the most regularly.
Okay.
So did you seek Watkins out, or did Watkins seek you out?
We kind of we were kind of looking for a spot, and they were the best fit for us. You know, we talked to some of all the other, obviously all the other distributors in the valley, but you know, we're so small that it's like, all right, where are we going to fit in the most? You know, Hayden and Stein and CSB, you know, they have great beers. They have a giant portfolio.
Pretty big.
And it's like, you know, to be honest, they're not going to be able to serve us well. And that's what they said. They're like, yeah, you know, you're kind of going to get lost with us. And, you know, because Watkins, even though as big of a company as they are for the rest of the state, they don't have as much of a presence here in town. Now, they do distribute Payette and Highlander and like Seltz Beverage. So, I mean, they're around.
Right.
But they also don't have this, you know, 40-page book of stuff that they're trying to sell, and for them it works really well too. You know, it's been a great partnership.
What do you produce per week, per month?
Oh, I'll be lucky if I could put out 20 barrels in a month. So, you know, and that's if so right now I've got 3, 6, 9, 12 barrels in the tanks right now, and that'll all go out in a month. And then if I'm doing it depends what I'm brewing. If I'm brewing fast fermenting beers like an IPA, you know, ales, cool. I can turn that tank twice in a month.
So and that's after looking at your website. You know, you're named as a nano brewery.
Yes.
And I actually had to look up what is a nano brewery, and under 2,000 barrels is the definition of a nano brewery.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, which was news to me,
which also means Powder House is a nano brewery.
Yeah,
like by that definition, all that barrelage is published by the TTB. Like you have to report it by law.
Yeah.
So like in 2022, which has been published, 2023 hasn't been published yet, but 2022 we brewed 20 barrels of beer. Yay! But we only started brewing in August of that year. So
tail end.
I've got another thought that I've got to share.
Please.
So if I'm understanding you, you're about 300 barrels a year?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Your listeners, if they see Alliteration on tap at a place, you better get a glass and try it. And I think you're going to like it. And I don't think this guy's going to be 250 barrels a year for very long.
We'll see. I mean, I think and again, another long-winded soapbox that I have is I think the future of the craft beer industry is local. And I think that should we need more production than just this space can provide, I can always contract with the, you know, like Payette or, you know, like Bombastic does. All Bombastic's beers are brewed at Payette. Like, you know, and it's great beer. And there's no reason why that can't happen for other small breweries. And maybe I don't need Payette size of a batch. Maybe I could just go to friends at someone like Powder House or Loose Screw or Burt's or, you know, some of these guys. I've talked to Bryce about it. It's like, hey, you want to do a 3-barrel batch? Let's do a 3-barrel batch or a 7. You know, we can do a double batch into the 7-barrel tank. You know, and there's a lot of that collaboration can go on too. So which again I also really appreciate about this area. That's
for sure. The whole beer community around here, fucking phenomenal.
Yeah, it's amazing.
I appreciate.
Is it a community or a family?
Well, we're not related, so
wow. Wow.
Yeah.
If it's a family, it's a very Alabama-esque family because there's a lot of brewers that move around.
Yeah, there is,
and that's may not be.
I know.
So
Powder House is for sale.
Correct.
That ever cross your mind?
We had just like when we moved when this house came up for sale, and it actually got listed on this Instagram page called Zillow Gone Wild, and it had 70,000 comments.
Oh my word!
Like everyone's just like, "What in the Breaking Bad is this?" Like, you know, like pictures of the garage open, and so like I said, every one of our friends was sending this to us. It'd be like, "Hey, look, it's a house with a brewery in it. You shouldn't buy it." Right. And so when Powder House went up for sale, it was like, "Hey, look, you guys need a tap room. There's a brewery for sale." And to be quite honest, it's like it's too big of a jump for us to do. It's a great space. The Schmitz are awesome, and regardless of what other people say, I think they've made good beer. Like it's a really family focused area. It's a great place to bring your family. You can bring your dog. They'll have good food trucks. They have live music. It's a fun place to hang out. And so I hope whoever does take control of that space either keeps it as a brewery or like kind of does something cool with it. Mm-hmm. Because I would hate for this community to kind of lose that space.
Yeah.
So are you liking what you have set up right now? I mean, are you good, or are you looking to the future, looking to get bigger, wanting that tap house? What's your vision for the future?
That's a good question. With business, growth is important, but I think smart growth is even importanter. That we are looking to get a tap room. We have some ideas. I don't think we're quite ready to announce it. We've talked about it. If folks listen to this, we've talked to people about it, but we're hoping to get a tap room by the end of the year. Mm-hmm. This year, it'll be here in Ada County, and it'll be a fun adventure. And then again, that will be kind of our big growth spurt. Will be to get our own tap room, so it's like, hey, you can actually come to us again. And so, which will naturally probably come at a detriment to distribution until we can get those contracts online. But that's our main goal for expansion. We're not going to. I don't really have ambitions to be the size of Payette or Sockeye or any of those. They've filled that niche, or they filled that space in Idaho, and I don't want to compete with those guys.
Right.
Not that it's a competition, but I think there's something to be said for just having that cool local community, cool space that you can go have some beers and have some really good conversations with your friends.
Yeah.
It's funny that one of our first guests on the podcast was Mike Francis from Payette. And in his mind, when he very first started out, he was strictly production. Mm-hmm. He didn't give a care about tap room or anything like that. Production.
Yep.
That's all he wanted to do. And he did a phenomenal job at that. But then once he got to that point where he was doing that, then his mind started shifting a little bit and saying, hey, wait a minute.
Well, the industry shifted.
Right.
I mean, and I've talked about how, like a lot of the breweries in Portland, and nationwide even, there's been a shift back to kind of that hyper-local, that small breweries, even the size of like Lost Abbey. They had 6 breweries all over the U.S., I think 6. But they've now scaled back. Now they're just back brewing in Southern California again. They're actually using Mother Earth's space in Southern California.
No, really?
They don't even have their own space anymore. And Lost Abbey obviously is famous for making great beer. And they did, but they realized that expansion, even though they were brewing the beer in Chicago or whatever, they were still a California brewery. And people in Chicago would rather drink a Chicago brewed beer. Even though it was being brewed in Chicago, it still wasn't a Chicago brewery, quote unquote. So I think people want to drink beer that's from their neighborhood, I mean, quite literally in my case, but
let's open the door.
Right. People want to drink local beer, and fresh beer is better beer and local beer is fresh. So that's kind of an easy analogy to make, but then I think the industry has matured to the point where people have heard of craft beer, but you can kind of get craft beer everywhere now. Now it's all right. I would rather have my local craft beer. I don't want to have, the stuff that's in 7-Eleven isn't necessarily local.
So what's coming up? What do you got in the works as far as beer goes?
As far as beer goes, I think I've mentioned it already. Like the 3 tanks that I've got here, mm-hmm. I've got our Cloudy Curiosity Hazy. It's dry hopped. It's just sitting on the dry hops for about a day more. The Baltic Porter that's in the tank behind me is actually the batch is going to be going into these 12-gauge barrels.
Okay.
X 12-gauge barrels. I don't know how you want to call it
right.
that, but from Mike Payette. Yep. And then we've got the big batch of Kolsch that'll be ready for that spring, summer. We released it officially, was the Doomsday Dunkel. That was in the partnership with End of the World Provisions Coffee. they made some cold brew for us, and we threw that in the beer. And that was actually that is Derek Brown from Highlander Brewing, now up in Salmon. That is actually his coffee company that he runs on the side. He's also a coffee nerd, so it's very good coffee. Let's see the other stuff that's what we've got kind of actively brewed. We're working on a spring seasonal for both Beer and Friends event at the Boise Depot. That'll be happening. I think it's April 6th. And then we'll also be at Shade City Brewfest there in end of April. That's a great brewfest, by the way.
My little friend here that came with me tagged along. He did the succulent display that they had the very first year that
excellent.
They did that.
Yeah, that was
So
a
we
good
went to that
brewfest.
one. That was a good time.
It's a good brewfest because it also showcases the botanical gardens really well.
Right.
And hopefully, I think they're pushing it to like the end of April. I mean, it's coincided with Earth Day. That's why they're doing it then. But hopefully this year, depending on what the weather's going to be, I mean, the groundhog says we're going to have an early spring.
Right.
So hopefully we'll have an early spring and have a really cool Shade City Brewfest.
Yeah.
And on top of that, do you play golf?
Negative.
Oh, so you're not going to go to
I
the...
smack balls around, but I don't say I play it.
Well, that's
we're
kind
kinda
of
the
like
same.
me. Yeah, I'm the same. I am not worth the shit, but Idaho Brewers United is having their golf tournament. First ever
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
golf tournament this year. April.
We just looked it up.
Yeah, end of April, like 27th
Still can't
or
remember.
something.
Just looked up. I still can't remember.
I think
We're old.
it was the 26th.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's down in there. Yeah, I've already got my team going. They scheduled it for late last year, but I mean that's
Yeah,
kinda
it was like in October last year.
Right,
wasn't
it was
Yeah.
bad
It was,
time.
it was trying to
fresh
golf
off
in
season
October.
and shit.
Yeah.
Not good timing. So
Well, if you need to raise your handicap, you can put me on your team.
All right.
right.
We'll keep you in mind because
Yeah.
we're hackers.
Oh yeah, we're not very good, but that'll be a good time. What else, Mike? What other questions you got?
You know what? I guess we've talked about a lot and learned a lot. And,
Yeah.
I guess probably for me, the question that I have is, we talked about growth. What's the one thing you'd like our listeners to take away from the conversation that we're having with you today about alliteration?
So
Hold on. I want you to realize that even after a couple of beers, I was able to say it. I have a friend. I'm from Michigan. And his wife will ask him to say, "What's the consistency of Massachusetts?"
I
Okay.
don't know if I could say that. So
And
That's pretty good.
how he repeats it to her is her level of knowing how intoxicated he is. So
a good one.
alliteration, I still can say it even at the end of the podcast. So I think we did good today because, to be honest, Adam, a lot of times at the end of these podcasts, you can tell that we probably drank more than one while we were doing it. So
as we should.
I'll give you the floor back. And what's the one takeaway you'd really like to see our listeners get?
The one takeaway, that's a good question. I'd say. Now I'm getting distracted by the.
I know.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love it.
Like, drink local beer. I mean, go out to your places. There was, again, this podcast I started listening to, and I'll plug it. It's How Not to Start a Damn Brewery. It's great. Kelly's got a great sense of humor, cynical as hell, matches my sense of humor too. So, but one of the things was that, like, name your top 5 breweries in your area, and then when was the last time you went to number 3? And so I would say make a point to go to those breweries that you support. I mean, not just because it's local, but we always go to this one because it's close to our house. Okay, pick a different one. Pick the one that you like that's maybe across town. Plan for it. And go out there and be like, hey, we really love your beer. And again, there's ways that you can support your local breweries without spending dollars. Following them on social media, doing the posts, buying them in the stores, getting beer to go. So it's like, all right, we know we're not going to be in for a couple weeks. Let's get a couple 4-packs, knowing they're going to sit in the fridge for a couple weeks. Do that, because then it's like, hey, when I'm drinking this at home, I'm still supporting that brewery, even if they might be across town or whatnot. And we have, I think Idaho has something special because we have this nexus of all of the beer ingredients. We have good water, we have good barley, we have good hops, and we have a growing beer scene here. Obviously there've been, we call ourselves Boise's newest brewery because Brownbeard, Burt's, and Gem State are all in not Boise, Garden City or Eagle. So we're hanging on to Boise. Yeah. And Voodoo Brewing isn't a brewery; they're just a tap room. Right. So I will call that out. But they, but yeah, support the local scene. Like there's great beer here, and I think there will continue to be great beer here as long as people vote with their dollars, vote with their feet on it.
Perfect.
So do you think that? And this is a question that we've asked several times. Do you consider Mother Earth local?
Yes.
See, that was mine. I agree.
I think they are local because even though they started in San Diego,
right.
I started in Portland,
right.
But I started my brewery out here. 95% of all of Mother Earth's beer is brewed up here in Nampa now.
Yeah.
Because now Lost Abbey is in their spot down there. And so, they started in San Diego, but now they're up here.
Yeah.
That makes them no less of an Idaho brewery than someone who moved up here from Texas or California or Oregon, Washington, Denver, whatever. And, I mean, this country is based on the fact that you can move around.
Right.
Yeah.
Like, we're allowed to move around. And that I don't think you should count it against somebody that because they came from some other state more than, less than 45 years ago, like your family. It's like, oh, I've been here for 4 generations. Like, cool. I was in, my family's homestead is in Wairika. Does that make me Californian? No. I grew up in Oregon, but does that mean that if I were to have kids here, are they still Oregonian? Or is it like where you went to high school? Or is it where you went to middle school? Is it where it's like, I don't know. That's
You're American.
Kind of a dumb question.
Have you ever,
we're American. Like, we're all American. It's like,
American.
yeah.
Have you been to the tap house or the brewery tap house out in Nampa?
Yes.
Crazy place. It's huge.
Oh, yeah. Well, it's in their production facility.
It's like a half a mile to the bathroom. I shit you not.
I wouldn't do well there.
I had to go, and it's like, shit, where is it? It's got to be coming up soon.
I would hope, and they haven't done it yet. I'm a musician too, so Sturgill Simpson, great artist, recorded a music video and his whole album at Sun King Brewing down in Texas, Tennessee. Did I fuck that up? Anyway, I have also had beers, and but anyway, he recorded these videos, and he's surrounded by the pallets of cans that are stacked 3 tall, but that they hooked up all the mics and everything, and it's very cool. I'd love Mother Earth to do something or maybe Payette do something like that, like record an album like right there in the cans.
That'd be cool.
Maybe they could record your album.
If we were still playing music.
What is the name of your band?
It's the Whiskey Flats, but yeah, we're not gigging right now. I've been focused on the brewery. So
what kind of music is it?
Bluegrass, Americana, kind of country.
So, and when are you gonna start playing again?
When I have time. My abundance of free time.
So it might be a minute.
Might be a minute.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you taking the time to hang out with us old guys.
I'm glad you showed us what you got going on here, and
I'd say we'll do the tour, but you're kind of sitting in it. So,
honestly, the quote unquote Bear Island garage is iconic.
We still got their sign
famous.
Up.
Yeah. I mean, everybody's known about this for hundreds of years. I mean, ever since they moved in.
Yep.
Not hundreds, but
seems like it.
I mean,
COVID counts for at least 5.
At least.
Yeah, no kidding.
Yeah.
So thank you guys so much for coming out here and do this, and it's been fun listening to your podcast too, and listening to the folks like, hey, I know that guy, I'm gonna listen to that one. So it's very cool.
Well, yeah, thanks. Yeah, it's been awesome. Wish you all the best, and hope things keep going well. Any more events coming up in the near term?
Oh, I'm sure I'm forgetting a couple, but best way to find us, we're on Facebook, Instagram. We don't have TikTok because I'm too old. But yeah, we have our website too, drinkalliterationales.com. It's at Alliteration Ales pretty much everywhere else. So
Anyway, so for any of those who
You know what? 20 minutes ago, you said, "Well, let's wrap it up. We'll let him get back to his
fine.
day." I think
it's another long story.
Jeez.
That's how things
I think there is a case, and I mentioned it earlier. Like when we have a tap room, I want it to be a place where you can come and sit down and hang out for a while.
Yeah.
Like I mean, my generation, us dirty millennials, were raised on Wishbone, Bill Nye, and Reading Rainbow, and so where do we go when all the coffee shops close and we don't want to go home yet? Like a brewery is kind of the best option. This country was founded in a pub.
Yep.
Why can't we have that vibe again? Why can't we have that type of spot where you can have long form, deep conversations with folks? Well, we're not going to have coffee at 5 p.m. We're going to have a beer. So, like,
And
why don't we do that?
something that I really appreciate about the millennials, I'm not, is you guys are responsible. I mean, I used to one eye at
Most
home.
of the time.
I used to one eye at home from the bar, and if I did get stopped, the cop would say, "Well, you don't look too drunk. Get home, be safe." You guys don't even test the water, and that's awesome.
There's a lot more stuff between us and the home and the bar nowadays than there was.
You're right. But yes,
honestly, we were talking about this the other day when we did a big bash at Brownbeard, end of year type of thing, and it is so easy to just say, "Okay, fuck it, I'm done. Calling an Uber."
yeah.
The resources out there to actually get home instead of driving,
Oh, for sure.
there's so much out there that
Yeah.
it doesn't make sense not to.
Don't drive drunk.
I mean,
It's
even
dumb.
Yeah, it's dumb. So, yeah, thanks.
right.
Yeah, thanks again for coming out here, guys.
You bet. Thank you. And if any of our guests that are listening want to get a hold of us or Adam at Alliteration, and you already got his information, gave it to you plenty of times. But if you forgot, kind of like Mike, you can reach out to us. You can hit us up on Gmail, emptycans2022@gmail.com, or Instagram, Facebook at #empty_cans.
Remember, we would like to hear from you, and what else you would like to see us doing with the podcast.
Wow, too many beers.
2 beers.
Wow.
With the podcast and places you'd like us to see, beers you'd like us to try, let us know.
Absolutely. And to close out this podcast, we do a quote. Okay? And I'm going to let Adam do the quote because it's kind of fitting.
Tradition holds that St. Patrick kept a brewer in his household in 5th century Ireland.
That is a good little beer fun fact.
Oh, okay. Not a quote, though.
No, not a quote. Sorry. Fun fact. Fun fact.
Beer is proof that God loves us and wants us to be happy. There's my quote.
There
Yes,
you go.
we have done that quote before.
I think we might have to end it with that the
Yeah.
next time we do a podcast.
Oh, we do it.
It's just a good saying.
Yeah.
It's just a good, again, drink good beer with your friends. That's what it kind of is about.
Yep.
drink local.
There you go. All right, guys.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
There's a couple.